No, I saw that there were only 2 buttons were open
Yeah.
and your stomach was out, but it was cool.
It's the new look. It's brat. It's brat.
It's bright.
So, I have a question for you.
I have a question for you.
Your name?
What's my name?
Marvin.
What's my middle name?
Hayter. Hayter. As
Very
opposed to the internet version of hater.
What is that?
Well, that's, people who
Oh,
troll people, yeah. It's an interesting connection.
Yeah.
Because haters are trolls, and you have worked as a troll in Ireland living under a bridge.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it's so great to be out in the
And do
open.
you, when you go to a leprechaun bridge,
Right.
before you cross it,
Right.
you're supposed to stomp 3 times to let the troll know you're there.
4 times if it's a foreigner.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, is that from
Schmigadoon.
Schmigadoon?
Schmigadoon,
Yeah.
yes.
So what was the first time we ever, no pun intended, hung out?
Oh, that was when we were swimming at the Y.
Oh, no, I don't mean that.
No, you don't mean that. We were making 3 amigos. I mean, he started bonding.
Bonding through humor, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
One-sided humor. Then I remember we would have amigoettes dinners with our wives.
Uh-huh. By the way, we don't say amigo-ettes anymore. Just,
Why not? And then
we don't say kitchenette either.
We don't?
No, because it implies a lesser of a kitchen.
I see. So anyway, we used to have these dinners, and we would laugh and laugh.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, I really like this guy. And then I remember when you had your first child, Catherine.
Yes.
And you presented her, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to see this guy less because we're going to have this kid to attend to.
I know, and you had that bitterness and anger.
Yeah, I still have it.
And then we just continued on, because I always have said, we've talked about this before, that you make movies, you're in Yugoslavia with a bunch of people for 3 months, everyone knows everybody, you get intimate with everybody, and then you never see them again.
That's right.
So we made a conscientious effort, I believe,
Yes.
to not have that happen.
But you really sparked something. I have a real question for you.
Do you do?
These Yugoslavian movies you've made, yeah.
Right.
I haven't seen them. Did they come and go?
Released. They were never released.
Or maybe just in Yugoslavia?
One was called Spartan 2, and I was like a warrior,
Wow.
a little warrior.
So you were miscast.
Yeah, a little bit. But the point of it is you make a decision. Will you continue on with something? I think we've made 5 films together. I think probably my favorite are The Father of the Brides,
Yes.
1 and 2. That's meant so much to so many people, especially when they're about to get married. What is a typical fan statement that someone says?
Well, a lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes, a young woman will come up and will say, my father was having a very difficult time. I was getting married, and he was having a difficult time with it, and we watched Father of the Bride together. And they said we would watch it like this. And I go, what do you mean watch it like that? Oh, we'd block out Marty Short. No, they say no, and they say that movie helped them bond. But we can't take full credit for that movie. We're actors.
I can, actually.
Yeah. Oh,
Frank brought joy to people,
Yeah. Well, the original remake script was very different than what it ended up to be.
In what way?
The original script, they had made the young woman kind of a motorcycle girl, and she had a very...
Listen, I understand. I thought that it was written by Nancy and Charles.
Yeah, I am telling that story right now.
Yeah, but you know what? I have a flight tomorrow.
I
so
don't.
I can't.
Yeah, okay.
Most people tell a story.
Well, if you're so proud of this flight, can I see your ticket to verify? Or are you just saying that?
No. It's an e-ticket.
It was pitched by the studio that Charles Shire and Nancy Myers had a great interest in doing Father of the Bride.
Oh.
And so they came in and completely rewrote the script from scratch, made it much more touching, and I think absolutely did the right thing.
And when Chevy Chase said no, is that when they went to you?
Kieran Culkin was in Father of the Bride 2, I believe.
And one.
And he was 11 or 10. And, he was a kid, so his acting was new. And then when I saw him on Succession, I thought he was so great. And he went from this rough-hewn,
Whatever that means. Like from...
rough around the edges.
Chaucer's era?
No. Anyway,
Who's very
I'm not even going to go
ruffian?
there. Yeah.
I found him ruffian.
you asked me about, I use the word shamefacedly. Then I started thinking, I don't know that there's a word shamefaced. I know there's shamefaced because I see it on you all the time.
That's
we have to mention the stellar Diane Keaton.
The brilliant Diane Keaton.
Yeah. And I was talking to Meryl Streep just last night, as a matter of fact.
Well, so you know everyone famous.
Well, and I was saying there are two actresses I've worked with who never do a bad take. One is Meryl Streep, one is Diane Keaton. There's always something real, unusual, new in every take.
Totally agree.
And I'd like to say that about you.
Well, why don't you? Oh, I see. Anything else? I have always found my experiences with people coming up to me, I can always tell what they've seen. Like if it's 45-year-old guy, and if I'm in an airport, I know it's Three Amigos. If it's a young lady in her late 30s, she will talk about Father of the Bride. And if it's a guy who's 28 who looks like he's on meth, it's Clifford.
I can always tell when someone's complimenting you and they haven't seen the movie.
Yeah.
For example, when I did my second film after The Jerk was Pennies from Heaven. Thank you. And it is a dark, dark drama. And people will come up and say, I saw Pennies from Heaven. So funny.
Well, I think maybe just your face exudes comedy.
Well, at that time.
Yeah.
I'm very curious because you've kind of always been interested in show business that I know from your past and stories you've told. But I know there was a fork in the road at one time because you also had an alternative possibility of a career.
Well, I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is about 50 miles from the border. And so we would only watch American television through Buffalo. And therefore, all these shows that I would see and was influenced, it never seemed real that I could do it because I was in a different country. So I wanted to be a doctor. And not because I cared about science. I was just a fan of Chad Everett's work on Medical Center. And then I went into pre-meds for 2 years and realized this is a mistake. So I switched to social work and then had more time to do theater in university and left an actor. It was kind of a perfect 4-year experience.
And your first little hint that you might be funny or...
Well, I grew up in a funny family, but certainly...
Like I did.
Yes. So you actually had like a hand mic at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Who likes dating? Did you ever do that act? No. What about you? Did you always want to be in show business? You were a magician.
I didn't know anything about show business. I didn't even know what that was, but I did know I liked comedy. You could do all kinds of psychological reasons of being a show off or getting attention, but I just liked comedy. And I loved Laurel and Hardy. We both loved, Jerry Lewis and
right. Lucy. I loved Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke was unbelievable.
Geniuses. Even as a young actor, I used to put DVD beside a certain speech. It meant do Dick Van Dyke. Or I put SL, Stan Laurel.
Wouldn't that be DDVD? Do Dick Van Dyke?
No, Dick Van Dyke. Okay, DDVDW. Do Dick Van Dyke well.
Oh, yeah. Now, I know one of the earliest things that happened in Toronto was momentous, the production of Godspell.
Yes, well, I was still in university, and I now decided to take a year off to try acting, and I auditioned for a show, Godspell. It was 1972. I think it was March 25th, the day I got it. And I remember it was very interesting. You'll like this part. That they only hired 10. And it was Gilda Radner, it was Andrea Martin, it was Eugene Levy, Paul Schaefer, myself, and Victor Garber was Jesus. So I remember that was a day that stands out in infamy, as FDR would say. How do you pronounce that word?
Fantastic. I don't know. That's fantastic.
Oh, great. And tell me about your first big job.
My first big job. I've had several first big jobs.
Really? So this is a long story.
No, my first big job was getting work at Disneyland.
Oh.
And then in that little parentheses was getting a job at the magic shop at Disneyland because then, I was able to perform for people. I was demonstrating card tricks and doing that sort of thing. Then I got a job at Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh, that's where Knott's came in.
You can't do my bit.
No, I'm not.
Okay, right. I would say Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. I was 21 and I got a job in a complicated way working at the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour.
Boy. That was great. Mm-hmm. And you've always been a communist?
Comedy writer.
Oh, comedy writer.
Comedy writer. I do have a regret.
What?
About the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. I was 21. I was a young writer, and the mantra of the age was never trust anyone over 30.
Right.
And so in this fluke situation, I got hired as a comedy writer and I'm like the young writer. I'm 21 years old. There were the older writers who had been there for years working with them. And, there was a little bit of animosity, toward us, the younger writers. But there were two writers on there, Hal Goodman and Al Goldman. And they were, old-time comedy writers. Years later, now I'm listening to some of my favorite old-time radio shows, like Jack Benny, and they go, written by Hal Goodman and Al Goldman.
Wow.
And I go, wow, how stupid was I that I didn't go to them and say, talk to me.
I think it's completely natural, though. I mean, it is stupid.
Thank you.
And you are stupid.
Yeah, thank you.
But no, I think that I was the same person. When I was in my 20s, I didn't trust anyone over 30. Now I don't trust anyone over 90.
Because you don't know they're going to be there the next
Well, I can't imagine.
There for you. Jiminy Glick has had a revival.
He has.
It started as you would do interviews as this character, Jiminy Glick, who is kind of the most ignorant, offensive interviewer who really didn't know his subjects. When did that start? How many years ago did that start?
I had a talk show for King World, and I wanted to create a character that
Right.
would go to junkets.
And then you got the Jiminy Glick in La La Land, which was a show that you did.
No, that was a movie.
A movie. It was?
Yeah.
Huh.
And you were in it, by the way.
I know I was in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I thought it was also a half-hour TV show. On
No, there was a boy, you've really done your homework.
I have.
It was a
I'm like
half-hour
Jiminy
TV
Glick.
show on Comedy Central.
And then you did a movie and everything. And then we do it in our show in sort of a, ad-libby way. And then you had a big comeback with it on Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, I don't know if it was a big comeback, but I certainly was on.
And there was not a disagreement because you were hosting the show for 4 nights. Question came up, should I do the whole show as
Right.
Jiminy Glick? And my opinion was, well, once you get out there, you're kind of stuck
Right.
in the outfit. So I would recommend doing it in little pieces. But you did it as all of Jiminy Glick, and there was this huge support
Well,
and
look,
revival.
you've always been there to give me
give you, steer you
suggestions
wrong.
and to steer me wrong,
Yeah.
and it's been one of your great.
But anyway, so now it's
Yeah.
back. So what, in your long history with Jiminy Glick, is your toughest interview, or no, your most delightful, present company accepted?
They were all great. We did a great one, Spielberg. I love the one where we did with Mel Brooks, where I was able to ask him, "What's your big beef with the Nazis?" But they were all delightful, and yours was hysterical.
I found the less the interviewee does, the better for the show. Is
Right.
that kind of accurate? Because you don't try to top Jiminy Glick.
I remember interviewing Alec Baldwin, and we did it 8 minutes, and then we took a break, and I said, "So what should we do now?" And he said, "Ask me about women." And I said, "Okay, so you work with Hillary Clinton?" "Oh, when she's banging on your door at 2 a.m.
He was saying that?
Yeah, needing it." "Really? What about Meg Ryan?" "Same thing." Anyway, Dianne Feinstein. Oh my God.
He's a funny guy, actually.
Hilarious. So Only Murders in the Building was co-created by you.
Yes.
And you are involved in the creative of each season. Mm-hmm. And we've had these brilliant guest stars. Which guest star has either shocked you or delighted you the most, other than Meryl Streep?
As you know, we have had a roster of guest stars, especially comedy guest stars. I consider Meryl Streep a comedy guest star too, because
Absolutely.
she is absolutely hilarious. And kind of each one better than the other. I mean, you work with Melissa McCarthy, and she's being hilariously funny, and then you suddenly have this kind of dark, intimate scene with her.
Yeah.
Personal scene.
Well, she's a brilliant.
You realize
comedian
why
and a
these
brilliant
people are stars, because they're really, really good.
actor. Right.
Can't really name one. It's so. I didn't know much about Eva Longoria, and she came in and killed it.
Killed it.
Killed it means good. yeah.
No, Eugene Levy, my God.
Yeah.
Camille Najani. How about Molly Shannon?
Molly Shannon is staggering in this episode because she has this. Now. Yeah.
We had a screening last night. She was making me laugh everything she said.
Now, I know as a kid, you were very interested in show business, and you had an inner life,
I
shall
did.
we say, up in your attic. Tell us about that.
Well, this is a long story, but sure. So I'm like 15, I'm 16, and so I had this imaginary show. Steve?